This is Inside the Wolf's Den, an entrepreneurial journey with Shawn and Joni Wolfswinkel.
Welcome back to Inside the Wolf's Den with your host, Shawn and Joni Wolfswinkel. Today, we have a guest with us in the house, Manny Vargas out of Las Vegas, Nevada. How are you, Manny?
Well, it's fall time in Vegas, and it's a nice weathered season, so it gets a lot better for us Vegas folk out here at this time of the year. So life is good.
Nice.
I'm grateful to be here. Thank you all for having me.
Well, thank you for joining us, and love that jacket, and you're always on, it looks like. So just
remind me to tell you my Vegas jacket story later.
Definitely, yep. So just a quick bio on Manny. So Manny Vargas is born and raised in Las Vegas. He is a remarkable individual whose life journey has been marked by resilience, success, and personal growth. Despite facing early adversity with the passing of his mother from cancer when he was just 10 years old, Manny discovered his passion and pursued them relentlessly. A talented baseball player, Manny played the sport through college, honing his skills and developing a strong work ethic. However, he didn't stop there. At a young age of 25, Manny demonstrated his entrepreneurial spirit by owning 3 successful restaurants, showcasing his business acumen and determination. Manny's journey took an exciting turn as he ventured into the vibrant nightlife scene in Las Vegas. He became involved in promoting and hosting nightclubs, leveraging his charisma and social skills to create memorable experiences for patrons. However, at the age of 29, Manny made a life-changing decision to get sober, displaying remarkable strength and determination in overcoming personal challenges. This pivotal moment led him to embark on a transformational path of self-discovery and personal development. Fueling his passion for his experiences and inspiring others, Manny wrote a book that not only chronicled his personal journey, but also offered valuable insights for personal growth and success. This endeavor opened doors for him to travel the country, speaking on over 300 stages, captivating audiences with his compelling story and motivational message. As a host of the Always on the Grow podcast, Manny has a privilege of interviewing and learning from celebrities, business leaders, and top entrepreneurs. Through engaging conversation, he shares valuable insights and actionable advice for personal and professional growth. That is quite a bio, Manny. Super excited to have you on the show today. Want to learn more about you and how this all got started. Obviously you've been super successful, so tell us.
Well, I think that's all for the show. I can walk off after that intro, right? I guess.
Mic drop.
Highlighted it all. I feel blessed, and I say that because when you listen to that, the first thing that comes to my mind is a lot of adversity, right? And life will throw you, in terms of baseball, a lot of curveballs, and I certainly had to step into the batter's box and not know that the curveballs were coming, and try to have to figure out how to swing the bat and properly make contact with them to do something with the tools that I was given. And when I look back in hindsight, I realized that it was a destiny contribution, that it was part of what's setting me up for something even bigger and greater, that in my belief, not against anybody else and where they stand, but I was a chosen one. Concerning the circumstances and the way that my life sort of unfolded. I was just telling somebody this the other day, that who would I be if I went through that journey between 20 and 30 and I was just screwing off, partying. I did own the restaurants. I was fortunate enough to promote and be in the environment of Las Vegas and host people from all over the world and make great quality relationships. But at the moment that I got sober, right before my 30th birthday, I started to have a different context in life and realized that for a full decade, I would party, go out, get high, drunk, and virtually do it almost every weekend, sometimes more during the week too. So not just every weekend of every year for 10 years, but almost every week and in between the weekends in terms of a timeline. And I looked at it as I walked away from all of that, never getting into an accident while driving, never having got pulled over from the police after being intoxicated, driving home hundreds of nights where I don't remember how I got home. And then I looked at my mom, and my mom passed away when she was 32. And she passed away from cancer. And so how bad of it would be for me to not take advantage of this life that I was granted and come out on the other side. And it would be incredibly disrespectful to her in terms of what she didn't have the chance to do, which was more time. She didn't have a chance to have more of that. So I started to reframe my perspective on that whole thing, where in that case, I realized like, okay, I made it here. I got through that season of life. Now it's time to really accelerate. And in my, deepest thoughts of conversation with myself, I've realized that I'm on a quest to prove to the world that you can do as much as you want and accomplish as much as you're willing to go get, by virtue of realizing that there's just this untapped tank inside of you. And it's our jobs to realize that. And so I'm never going to settle at something. It's always going to be, max out, maximize who I can be in all areas of my life. And it's been quite the challenge because I didn't come wired with, an ideal set of functions, right? I've been very much derailed and affected and influenced by a lot of the conditions of the world and the conformities and the tragedies and the deaths and all that stuff. So, I can go on and on and on, but I'll pass the baton back to you so that you guys jump in and ask some questions there.
I would love to learn. Sorry to interrupt you. On that story, like, because I think a lot of people maybe live in similar lives, or and usually it's a very tragedy that causes people to open their eyes and see it. Like,
that was my question.
What in your life caused you to say, you know what,
it's time.
Yeah, and I understand with your mom, and that could be like she didn't have that ability, or wasn't given that opportunity, and you threw away, and you're like, hey, I got to change now. But what caused you to see a different perspective and change your narrative?
I think it's a cumulative effect of life events, right? So if we rolled it back all the way to when I was young and when I was in that car accident, I don't know if I shared that with you and read that off, but I have a giant scar on my face right here, and it's very visible. Like if you shine the light on it, you look closely enough, it covers my whole face. And that's because I was in an accident with my mom when I was 5 years old. And look, I was gone. Life was over. Like I went to the white space, and I had that moment where, you are in that position where this is where I can kind of get it. And I'm not a woo-woo guy, but it can kind of go there where life is taken away from you. And so you come back, and in that moment at such a young age, there was a plan. It goes back to that whole thing of destiny, right? And so I walked away. I survived. Adults get into car wrecks where they get T-boned. Like we did at 50 miles an hour, where I was sitting on the side as a young boy. And that, going backwards in hindsight, helped me realize like there was more to this. And so oddly enough, throughout the years of life, I was always inspired by heroes. And my dad would always watch Van Damme movies and Steven Seagal movies. And I watched baseball on TV here in Vegas. We didn't have any professional sports teams back then. So I watched TBS or WGN, and I would watch the Braves or the Cubs. And, it was just sort of my development into probably baseball. But I just remember always watching the guy that would hit the walk-off home run, and he would be rounding the bases, and they'd be chanting, the whole stadium would be cheering for him, and the crowd would go wild. I was like, man, I want to be that guy. Like, I just want to be the hero, right? Like, I just remember having that youthful conversation with myself. I want to be Van Damme. I want to be this guy that's just a badass. And I think that was a part of me. I think this is why I say it's who I am. But as part of the process of living life, I realized that I was thrown a crap ton of adversities, right? Like the whole timeline, chronological order was like, okay, here's another adversity for you. Okay, here's another adversity. And it just kept going. And so I started to collect these ideas that I was less than, or I wasn't worth it, or that I was supposed to be poor. So like, it was like this double-sided thing that was working for me and it was working against me. And it didn't end up becoming discovered until I got sober, obviously, almost 30 years later, where I realized, oh wow, okay. But the funny thing is, like, I was always ambitious. I always wanted to be the professional baseball player that was my journey. And then that didn't happen. And then immediately I shifted back to like regular world. So I had an identity crisis And then I came back to Vegas to start working, and I was like, I need to build a business. Like, I don't know how to do this. But that's my ticket next. And so I just went on this conquest to start working on business at, 19, 20, 21 years old to figure it out. And I did. And I was like, wow, okay. I didn't do it to the best of my ability because I was young and dumb and still partying and having great nights out and taking drugs and drinking every night. And so priorities were like, oh, I got the business. Now I can just celebrate. So those are the young, dumb years that you don't realize are not how you actually do that. And so I wish it could say it was one thing, but I think it was a very much a cumulative compounding process of different events that helped me get there. And just by virtue of my quest internally, eventually it was realized like, okay, you have to stop doing this thing that's crushing you and holding you back. And you're going to liberate yourself by virtue of that. And because you're doing that, now you're stranded naked with vulnerability. And now you have to explore who you really are and recreate yourself and redefine yourself. And that's when all of that started to piece itself together after that decision to get sober, is when I went on that quest to really understand who I was, because I thought I knew who I was. And there's certainly parts of me there, but I had sort of rebuilt myself completely. And I, transparently, I still have things internally. So for example, I don't think I've ever admitted this in this case, but like it's because I do a lot of homework and research, but I have PTSD. Like I haven't gone to somebody and said, hey, diagnose me. But when you get hit in a car wreck at 50 miles an hour and you're there, like in my mind, naturally, I have imaging going on in my head where I think worst case scenario. And I'll have mental recognition patterns where I think a car is going to come smash me. If I'm driving through an intersection, I always look. And so I was just doing homework and I realized like, oh, these are events of people that have actually been in war zones or in other traumatic situations. So I basically said, I'm self-diagnosing that this is a reality that I have, right? I have to fight extra hard to not let that win because it comes up. I just sometimes can't control it, right? It just happens. And so some of that stuff is very deeply rooted in the evolution of my life. And so I realize I have to overcome those things. I have to work actively on overcoming those things because it would be much nicer for me if I didn't ever get in that car wreck, but then I wouldn't have such a great story to tell, right? It wouldn't have set me up to understand the other side of life. So I've realized that there's a lot to the quest, and the quest for me never ends, right? It's always like, hey, how can I keep discovering more of myself? How can I keep unlocking the next level? And I'm obsessed with that. I'm just obsessed with that at this point, because once again, it goes back to what I said. I know what I can do in terms of potential, and I now know how much potential I have, and I will never stop short of reaching for my fullest maxed out potential. And obviously I probably will never tap the full thing, but it's just going to come down to me constantly working on getting better in every and all areas of my life.
Yeah. One thing I want to add, because I know that's not easy to do what you did, right? And making that decision, to, stop drinking, all of those things. But talk about maybe some of the challenges, right? Because you have to have the mindset, right? And talk about maybe some of the challenges you had to go through to stay sober. I might shock you when I say this, but it actually wasn't a challenge for me. In fact, I was so disgusted and fed up with that life that I was living that when I made the decision to quit drinking, I remember then it was like, it's non-negotiable. That was it. It was like, I don't care. And by the way, at that same time that I made that decision, I still was working in nightlife. And I would still go to the nightclub every night, and I would still host. I would take people all over the city. And of course, they would have all the alcohol, all the free drinks you can imagine. All the temptation,
they would come over, everything, all of it. And the drugs, they would line up the lines of cocaine. They would have the ecstasies and the mollies. And I would be like, I'm good. Like I'm so committed to leaving this behind me because I'm so sick and tired of sabotaging my life, right? Because I had great people in my life that I ruined relationships with. I had business opportunities where I lost the business and I let down employees and I lost my money. And then I lost lots and lots of extra money from gambling every night because I would get wasted. And so I'd have negative bank accounts, and I had these just disgusting depressive events after that. I lost my mom, right? So, I mean, I was compounding loss, and I was very disgusted with that quality of life. And so to decide to get sober, it was it. Like, I didn't even question trying it again. And I just basically set on a brand new path, and it was actually pretty easy, even in those environments, which is where, people have had different experiences with that. They've had to go to different rehabs. They've had to go spend time in facilities. There's a gamut for how to do it. And I'm not saying that my way works for everybody, but I just know that it was, now I have other challenges today, like overcoming certain internal elements of myself, but that decision for me, no brainer, like done, not even a question.
Yeah.
You do, it seems like you do, from just the short conversation so far, like a lot of self-work and, self-improvement. What like strategy is, what's like your daily routine? Do you do that through meditation? Is it working out? Is it
podcasting, listen to
I mean,
books,
I'm just curious, like how all the above, people in your life that you speak to on a daily basis, but like, what do you do to really work on yourself? Because it seems like you're really, like you said, it's awareness, and you've done a lot of things to be aware of something, to overcome it, so you don't go down that road. But maybe speak to a little bit of your kind of daily practice.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's evolved over time. When it first started for me, you got to remember, I didn't practice any of these rituals. Like, I always had a good spirit and a good heart, people would tell me, because I was always there for somebody or willing to lend my advice. But when I got sober and I had to recreate myself, I basically, at that time, I would just buy the books. I would go to the store or order them online, or I would pop on the podcast or watch the YouTube videos. And if somebody had something to say and they were telling me what to do, I was doing it. I didn't give a dang what the heck they were telling me to do. Tony, and I remember this very distinctly, Tony Robbins would be like, walk around outside, go around your neighborhood and tap your fingers and chant, do stuff like that. And I was like, I'm in, let's go. And so I would walk around the neighborhood and I'd be doing these silly things. And I'm thinking to myself, you're so dumb. This is ridiculous. But then I just remember liberating myself because I was doing the work. And I did the work religiously. And I think that's been one of my bigger, better virtues to this point, is that I am a freakish action taker. And it's almost like I fried my brain in that capacity with all the drugs and the alcohol to not be concerned about a part of life where it's like, that could hold me back. It's like, we're jumping into something, let's do it. I think it gradually got better, but one of the biggest virtues I think that I have had in my life, so just to sum that part up, has been courage, right? I've always had this high level of courage, which I think has guided me throughout the process of life. And so as it's evolved, every time I would, I said, in essence, would graduate a level of understanding, I would meet the next thing that I would have to work on or get better at that point. And at first it was like, hey, how do I change the way that I see the world and how I think? Okay, awesome. Then it was, okay, well, I was fortunate enough to get brought on to go travel the country and speak for 2 years under, a big speaker. And he took me under his wing. I'm like, I've never got on stage before. In fact, I was terrified to be on stage, and I got thrown into a professional environment almost like this. And I was like, all right, let's go, And so now I have to go learn how to do that and learn those skills. And then I realized in that process, I didn't have any formal sales skills. Like I guess I could connect with people and promote a club and get them to do what I want because I had a fun personality. But formally, I had no idea what I was doing. So I was like, oh, I got to go learn how to do this. Great. And so at every level, it was the same thing. It was like, okay, it was a combination of reading or looking at the material, but then just a ton of action on top of it. Like, okay, let's go. Like, let's just throw ourselves into it. And today it's I think it gets even more challenging because it's just like, this could be this complacency that sets in because you've got used to learning. And I think there's a very fine line between, depending on learning and not doing enough. Sometimes I catch myself a little bit. But I always know that my learning for that reason, like right now, I'll give you the perfect example. Okay. My life is heavily inundated right now with studying Deion Sanders. Okay. And watching what he's doing at Colorado. Why? Because well, first of all, I love sports. Two, I like how he's completely turned the program around. I like the story that's behind it. And I'm just listening to what he's saying, how he's doing this, how he's doing that, because I'm cross-referencing always in my life. I just became a father. I have a 1-year-old as of a few days ago. I have a fiance. Like, some of these things were absentee virtues or actually like living themselves out as vices in my life. So perfect case in point, a standard, right? Like, I didn't actually know and define a standard. I thought I had good standards, but then I kept hearing a standard over, and I'm watching Dion. He's like, it's the standard. It's the expectation. And I'm like, you know what? I should really pay attention to this a little bit more. Like, what the hell is he talking about? What is he talking about? And so I was like, okay, standard is this. It's like, this is the way we live our life. This is how it is. I expect this to be this way. And that's how we conduct ourselves, type of thing. And I watch the totality. I listen to the kids. I watch how he's talking to this. And I see it, and I'm like, oh, I can really use it. I can adopt that. Yeah. And so whether that's YouTube, right, or whether that's me looking at something or reading a book, it's the same principle dragged out across wherever I'm at that point in my life that I know is very much a point of massive exponent for me and leverage, because like, I do a lot, but then I realize, like, hey, I got a family in the pipeline now. I got a young man that's coming up behind me. He needs to have certain things in his life that I'm leading him from. Same with the fiance. And so that's a big part of where we're at right now. Mm-hmm. In addition to other things that are helping build the business and the podcast and other things like that. So I was like, okay, in order for me to perform even higher, I know I need to understand this. I know that this is a necessity. There's no exception to that, right? So if I don't go become that guy and that type of a leader, well, I'm always going to only hit a certain cap, and that's not okay with me. So I find it in different ways and different times, and there's certain things that inspire me. And fortunately, I'm a sports fan, and that's always been something that I've gravitated towards. And I used to play baseball, and I, quite honestly, in these early days of me, because I've done a lot of stuff recently where I've helped a lot of people and I've had a very good life, but I was a bit of a disbeliever in my potential. Weirdly, everybody else saw it, but I still didn't really allow myself to break free. And because of that, I capped myself a little bit, right? So now I'm actually out in my own, doing my own thing, and it's exciting, but it was parts of me where it's like, man, I used to play baseball. I had 20 teammates. I played football my senior season, and I had coaches all around me, and I had all these great things, and I can pull from that. And it was really good dynamics. And now it's like me, and I'm growing, right? I'm trying to figure this whole thing out, and it gets into me a little bit. So I'm like, okay, well, I want to grow. I want to build this. I'm always looking at what kind of life I want to build, what kind of life we want to live. And so in that case, and it's probably a very long-winded answer to your question, but it's gradual, and it's like a blend of, like, if I need to go something to see what that means, I'll go check it out. But then I'm also dumping a ton of action on top of that. And that regimen is pretty much just active every day. Yeah. Right. And, more so like in the evenings now, I probably do more of my learning if there's a time dedicated to that. And the rest is production. The rest is just producing. Yeah. So
it's hard. It's definitely hard with a 1-year-old.
Yeah.
So.
And
yes. Unpredictable.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I love hearing your story, Manny. I think from where you were growing up to your mother passing and having to go through all of that, and to where you're at right now, right? But I want to kind of know more about what you're doing now, like what motivates you, what drives you to success now, and overall what you're doing.
Yeah. So obviously the podcast is something I'm absolutely obsessed with. This is, so you appreciated earlier when you said vulnerability. Mm-hmm. These last couple of years have been challenging because as part of me realizing, like, I want to become the best that there can be of me, getting into a relationship without fully, like, I realized myself in my own silo by myself. Then I got into a relationship in 2020, and we were doing it long distance. Mm. And so that was great. And then we moved in together here in Vegas, and 2021 was just hell for me, becoming a better man for my partner, because I didn't have a mother growing up. I didn't have love. And I was fighting it very hard because I didn't want to change or soften up and learn what it was like to be in a better relationship, because that would represent me letting go of this person that I thought I was and how I was on this fast track to even more success. And if she was coming in, then she was interfering with my progress and my pacing, and that wasn't okay with me subconsciously. So I would create hell there. So that was a very important time for me to and she stuck it out. She weathered the storm, and she shouldn't be here right now, but I feel again, extremely grateful. But she as well knew I was capable of change in that department, right? I had done great things before that. And then that was a specific category that we had to grow through. And then in 2022, we got pregnant, and then the baby's on the way. And then, towards the end of that last year, September, so it's been a year now, we finally started to stabilize. So in all of that 2021 and, even 2022, it was like, I'm trying to figure out my identity as an entrepreneur, but I'm also trying to figure out my identity as a partner. And then 2022 comes, and it's like, I hadn't figured out how to really bring down the turbulence in that yet. And so I was very much trying this, trying that. Fortunately, I'm very skilled in sales and communication. And so I always I was never worried about not making money. It wasn't on my terms, right? It just wasn't.
Right.
And so that was very disturbing to me, because I knew in my deep soul that I was meant for a lot more, but I was also all over the place because I was trying to figure other things out, and I didn't necessarily see myself as going all full-time as an entrepreneur. I didn't have the belief yet that I needed to have. And so it stalled me out quite a bit. Now, I say that stalled me out on a business side, but turned out we emerged into a fantastic relationship and growing. Now I'm a father and have learned how to be a better selfless father and partner. So those 2 years were really productive for that. Not so much business and economically, but we still did well. But I was a bit chaotic there on that side. And so recently, I've spent a lot of time going back to that drawing board and say, okay, what does life look like? What kind of life do we want to live? Where are we at? What have we accomplished? Okay, how can we tell this story? So now I'm very much focused on taking what my experience has provided, which is sales and communication. And from a business standpoint, I'm helping people in the managed service provider space, which are MSPs, help them learn how to develop their own sales appeal and sales swag and have conversations that convert. Because traditionally they don't come to the table as technicians, as their own independent business owners, to know how to do that the best that they can. So we've developed products around that and services and coaching, because it's the one thing I got really good at. And it was extremely fortunate to have the best mentorship in the world. And I'm talking about some of the top B2B people in the world, obviously being around Brad's office every day, running a celebrity division. And then several of my other mentors, the top of their field in that department. I've been extremely lucky. And so I've been able to provide value back to the marketplace, but that's a stepping stone to the ultimate goal for me. And I've spent a lot of time questioning what that was and how I want this whole thing to play out. And ultimately it's the capstone is movies and cartoons around Vegas and integrating my journey as part of the story of how those movies and cartoons are set up. But to get there, there's a plan. And after we hit a benchmark for what we do with sales appeal, we'll start to invest a lot more resource into creating content that's Vegas themed, around Vegas. I've already started to plant some seeds like that and do some stuff that way. So now it's just about doing it at scale. And then it will turn into, hey, the Vegas figure, there's eyeballs on you, there's attention. And then the next thing after that is Manny wants to earn the title to Mr. Las Vegas. So I'm going to go to Wayne Newton and I'm going to say, Mr. Newton, you're great. You were an entertainer, but I've done way more. I've done way more for this city in a completely different capacity. Can you lend me over? Can we co-own Mr. Las Vegas? Right? Can we do that? And so that's part of the plan. And then last, like I said, is we'll keep adding some buzz to the movies and cartoons. So it's very well thought out at this point.
Yeah,
I know exactly what we need to do next.
I love the enthusiasm.
Yeah.
That's some big shoes to fill.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's cool to see, because we always talk about this as well, at each stage of your life, right? You'll see even bigger goals once you accomplish that. And so it's exciting to kind of see when it all unfolds. So talk a little bit about your book. What's the name of your book, and what give us, some insight on why you wrote the book and how our listeners can get a copy of it.
Yeah. So Las Vegas was, one of those things where everybody that comes to Vegas and they ask you, you live here? Oh my God, what's it like? Oh, how do you, I was that guy always. And no matter where I went, everybody always had a Vegas story. Everybody always wanted to talk about Vegas. And so I knew I had a natural shoe in, right? I just had a shoe in.
Who doesn't have a Vegas story, right?
Right,
Have
exactly.
a Vegas story.
Exactly. It's something about this town that unites. Believe it or not, it's odd, but it actually unites people. So, and I'm aware of that. So the book was this genesis of, okay, like I've lived a crazy life out here. I've got a lot of stories to tell. And here I am getting sober. And I started exploring all this personal development stuff. I started watching all the YouTube videos. I started listening to the podcast. Like I said, I started going to these different events, and I started getting sold this idea that, a book is a door opener. It's a gateway to doing some more of this stuff, right? People will take you a little bit more seriously. They'll start to pay attention to you. And so at that time, it's been a while now since I've had that book out now, but the idea of it was, one, is to just get the story out and prove to yourself, in addition to that, prove to myself that, I could do something, right? Because before I was like, I wasn't really doing much except for partying. That was really all it was. And so writing a book became a very important project for me to prove to myself and to share my story in a way where people can see that there's hope and there's transformation possible in one's life. And, I didn't really hold anything back at that point in my life. And in terms of sharing what was in that book, I told very, gory stories about my nights out partying, drinking, issues I had with girlfriends back in the day, and really what the journey was like in Vegas for me, based on a different formula that helped me get to the point after the fact of realization, like, hey, I missed all these opportunities to live life differently. And so maybe if you read this, you can have a perspective shift your way. But it was very story driven. It's very heavy on my life journey and understanding more about where my background is and came from. And, is it a good read? I think people have really found value in that by being inspired by the sort of the transition of life. And I think that's been the best thing for it. And yeah, it's still out there. It's I still give it out. I still hand it out because, it's hard to sum up who you are. But if you give people a book that's pretty easy to read and they can get their hands on it, they go back, they read it. And I love getting the messages after the fact. And, they're always like, man, that's amazing. I'm glad, and so now they have a better understanding of you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
totally.
You got to tell us the story behind the jacket. I don't think we have. So I'd still love to hear that.
Yeah. So I guess I probably get everybody excited about, like, there's some crazy stories, but it's funny. Everywhere. I know. I teed that one up for you guys to be let down, huh? But I'm not trying to let you down. Let me see if I can split it up. The thing about the jacket is it's become that staple of, like, everybody and everywhere I go always says, wow, I love your jacket. Like, I love your jacket.
Yeah.
Right. And it's such a cool jacket. And I did that on purpose. Actually, I bought the jacket because part of me starting to set the stage for Vegas' future is by wearing something that reflects Vegas to some extent. Right. So it becomes an acknowledgement of an identity. It's like, hey man, I always see you wearing that jacket. So it's not hard to miss. Right. So part of it is branding, but part of it is also representing the essence of this city. Right. And demonstrating it, wearing it on my sleeve. And an iteration of that's possibly coming in terms of building that into the Vegas theme of the brand of the future, in terms of maybe wear your jacket or something like that. But it was a very decisive and purposeful reason to start wearing the jacket. And I actually was going on the hunt. Funny enough, I was like hunting around Vegas for the right look, the right feel. And some of the other things I bought were cheesy and not so cartoony, and I'm like, eh. And then
that was it.
by accident, I think I walked into a store and I saw this hanging up, and I'm like, oh, here we go, there it is. Like, I was over the moon. I was so excited, and then sure enough, even my son looks at it and stares at it all the time. I'm like, you'll get it in the future, son.
Oh, that's awesome. Love that.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
I know it's not the greatest story, but I just thought because you were bringing light to something that I get very often, which is that jacket's so awesome,
Yeah.
And I love it because it is a resemblance of my Vegas roots, right? And I always tell people, like you can argue with me about being a better business person or a better sales professional or anything like that, and you'd have a valid argument. But you will not argue with me about being born and raised in Vegas, because I will kick your you know what, because I can tell stories. Now you probably have somebody that's older than me, but and could have a valid debate with me, but I think I would still win, because just the sheer story of like being born right next to the Strip, growing up right off the Strip, partying on the Strip young, working in the hotels, nightclubs, going out with like, it's hard to beat me. Yeah. It's just hard to beat me. Yeah. So I take pride in that.
It's awesome. Yeah. I've actually never heard, because, you hear Vegas is so transient, and people are either, move there for a short time and then leave, or people just go to their for vacation and leave. But it's awesome to hear that somebody that just loves and passionate about the city.
Yeah, love it.
But totally.
Yeah, something we ask a lot of our listeners is, if you could go back and see a 20-year-old version of yourself, what advice would you give yourself?
Yeah, I think it's a thoughtful question that provokes the thought of just answering it rapidly for satisfying the answer, I think works. But I don't think that it's that. I mean, one could argue that, Manny, if you were going back to your 20-year-old self and like looking at it now, I could be like, dude, go have fun. Mm-hmm. Go enjoy yourself the way that you did. Why? Because, man, it's a hell of a story. It's compelling. You had a lot of fun. You got your butt kicked. You're going to go through life. You're going to open some restaurants, right? When you're in your mid-20s, you're going to lose love. You're going to fight. You're going to come back. You're going to get life's going to whip your butt. But how could you not appreciate that after the fact? Mm-hmm. Like, would you be willing to give up 10 years of your life to create an epic story that literally the whole world could benefit from in 20 years? That you would say, hey, if you did it differently, you might be at a different place, which you could argue that too. But the more that I think about that, you two, I don't know that I would say, just go it. Just do it. You're 20 now, march forward. Mm-hmm. And whatever it throws at you, you're going to receive, because that's what I've got now, right? It's like, it tried to throw everything in the kitchen sink at me. But I don't regret one bit of it, because, even a short time later, like less than a decade later, I've done a 180, and that experience that I got living that season from 20 to 30, right before my 30th birthday, it's unparalleled. I don't know that much people have that opportunity to share that story. Yeah. And it ties right into what my future plan is. Mm-hmm. Like I'm dead serious when I say like part of the big overall mission. So one, that's obviously the sales stuff right now is all a stepping stone, right? And I remember, I think Arnold Schwarzenegger said this best. It's the vision. The vision concept's very big for me. So I think I may have left that earlier. I've always had a big vision, which is if you could sum it up in the word. But Arnold Schwarzenegger was like, look, I'll become the best bodybuilding champion. And when I become the best bodybuilding guy, I'm going to go and I'm going to do movies in Hollywood. And because I do movies in Hollywood, I'm going to get rich and famous. And then because I get rich and famous, I can go out and be a politician. Right. So it was like, I need to do this. And then I need to do this. And I need to do this. Mm-hmm. Now, one might say, well, life will throw you a button. So yeah, sure enough. But if I'm completely clear on my path and I know I'm capable of executing that path, well, then I'm going to do it. Right. And so because I'm on that path now where I'm clear, hey, sales is what builds me up and makes us, very, very happy. And then after that is when I can start funneling into the stuff that drives me even more to the moon on terms of things I enjoy and what I want to be my ultimate goal in speaking. It's almost like, people speak the word of God out in different ways. I'm going to speak the word of opportunity and blessing and progress and growth and hope through Vegas, right? Like that's really what it is. And so how could I do that the way that I want to and create a differentiator unless I've gone through what I did in my 20s? Like I can't. It wouldn't be as valid to somebody. They'd be like, "Oh, who are you, man? Just some random guy that moved to Vegas 6 months ago from California." It's like, yeah, Vegas, like it wouldn't be the same. Right. So, man, just if 20-year-old man was like, hey, man, life's going to get very interesting here for the next decade, buddy. Just buckle up.
No, I think it's a great answer, and I think it's very valid. Yeah. And you always, the lessons you learned is what makes you, and so you wouldn't be who you are today without going through all that. So I appreciate the honesty and transparency. The one thing we want to know is like, how can people want to get in contact with you, reach out to you, learn more about you, your courses, your coaching, and all that?
Yep. So right now it's very focused on who we're helping and what we're helping them on. So it's like, I'm not necessarily entertaining outside stuff. I learned that lesson sort of the hard way, which is a good thing. Trying to appeal to all people to do all things. And like, I can help you with life coaching. I can help you with this because I've done it. I'm like, here's our customer. Here's what we're doing. So if you're in that space of MSP and you need that help, then it's great. So then I would just go to have more sales appeal. moresalesappeal.com is our business site. Okay. I host my podcast on Always on the Grow, which is just more the blog version. Okay. So you can go in there, plug into that and read up on it, and or find the YouTube videos all in one place, or any one of my social channels right now that I'm investing a lot of my personal energy and time into to build. And that stuff takes just an enormous amount of time in terms of grow a massive audience. So I'm excited about putting stuff together every day. And those are all at This Is Manny Vargas. Awesome. So it's all synced, and you can pretty much attach to anything that I'm doing there with where we're at the moment. Yeah, I mean, we'll keep evolving all of that over time too, to match what happens at the next stage in the journey towards the vision.
That's awesome. Yeah, we'll put all that in the show notes so people can reach out to you if they're looking for that. And we appreciate you taking the time today. We both went to UNM, so
rivalries.
Yeah, so we're both we're diehard Lobo fans, and so we always and we love basketball. So we usually go to the Mountain West tournament there in Vegas. So
oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, so hopefully we can. In March, so hopefully we can connect with you, and we'll reach out to you when we're in Vegas next March. So
that would be great.
Yeah.
I would love that.
Yeah. And we
I enjoy
thank
people
you.
like I still feel like I have that host spirit in me, professionally.
Well, I feel you could show us a good time. You can show us around.
As long as I can borrow that jacket, just for a few minutes, maybe.
I was in Cleveland the other day, and I just got back a couple nights ago, and I was at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Oh, sweet.
And they have all of the outfits and the different jackets and the badass suits and stuff that every, rocker and musician played in. So I was thinking, when you said that, I'm just going to do my own little Vegas Hall of Fame and make this my first jacket in it.
Yeah,
so,
awesome.
Who's your baseball team you cheer for? Do you have
it's always been the Braves by virtue. Yeah, just the Braves, because it was always what I watched. And so, we're getting a team here pretty shortly. It's probably going to be the A's, as you probably have read or heard.
Correct.
And so it will be interesting to see how that turns out. But it's hard when they're transplant teams. It's like two teams coming from Oakland. It's like we're absorbing their trash. It's like But the Vegas Golden Knights is obviously the homebred team, which is born here, right? They were in a first-time franchise expansion team, and so that's like homegrown, and so that's why that franchise will have probably the deepest roots of any franchise that ever comes here, because it's not something coming from somewhere else. And
gotcha.
I think the city is extremely proud of that.
Awesome. Cool. We're a big sports fan as well. So yeah, next time.
We need to hang out even more.
Exactly. Yeah. So we love that. But we appreciate you taking the time today, and we got a lot of value today, and we really appreciate it. So anything we can ever do for you, please let us know. But we appreciate today.
All right. Well,
absolutely.
Thank you, Manny.
Yeah.
And
thank you.
We will see you all next time. See ya.
You've been listening to Inside the Wolf's Den, an entrepreneurial journey with Shawn and Joni Wolfswinkel. Tons of entrepreneurial podcasts are out there, talking. But Joni and Shawn are living it every single day. Their portfolio now includes many franchises and medium-sized businesses. We talk about the trials and motivators of successfully running a business. Join us again soon for another podcast. But until then, reach out on the website at InsideTheWolfsDen.com, on Facebook at Inside the Wolf's Den, on Instagram at Inside the Wolf Den. We'll see you again soon. This is Inside the Wolf's Den. We'll see you next time.